Tibet TV is delighted to welcome today's special guest, Uzra Zeya, the Under-Secretary of State for Civilian Security, Democracy and Human Rights in the United States administration, who now also serves as the United States Special Coordinator for Tibetan Issues. Tonight, we'll be talking with Under-Secretary Zeya on her plans to carry out this important responsibility of serving as the Special Coordinator for Tibetan Issues. Under-Secretary Zeya, Tashi Dilek.
Tashi Dilek Tenzin. I'm delighted to be here.
You are now the Special Coordinator for Tibetan Issues, but you are not new to Tibet or the situation inside Tibet. You have led the United States delegation to China in the year 2013, following which you have expressed your concern over China's tight control over Tibetans and Uyghurs. The situation inside Tibet is becoming worse day by day, with the Communist Party of China banning the pictures of His Holiness the Dalai Lama, destroying religious symbols, imposing Mandarins in schools, arbitrarily arresting and detaining Tibetans by accusing them of sending out information outside Tibet, and sentencing numerous Tibetans without a free trial. All of these and so much more have become not only frequent but intensified. In the face of such gross human rights violations inside Tibet on such a large scale, how are you planning to engage with the Chinese leadership, or have the United States administration engaged with the Chinese leadership to bring about an immediate end or stop to these disturbing acts by China?
Well, thank you, Tenzin, for the opportunity to engage your audience. And I want to say at the outset how honored I am to serve in this role as U.S. Special Coordinator for Tibetan Issues. And in taking on this responsibility, I see it as fully reflecting President Biden's commitment to center human rights and democratic values in our U.S. foreign policy writ large. So I am absolutely committed to working with the international community and to engaging PRC officials on advancing the human rights of the Tibetan people and preserving their unique historical, religious, cultural, and linguistic heritage. And this means calling upon the PRC to end its interference in the selection and the education and the veneration of the Dalai Lama and Tibetan Buddhist religious leaders. Other aspects of my role include calling upon the PRC to end its surveillance and its harassment of Tibetan diaspora communities all over the world, including in the United States. We call upon the PRC to engage in direct dialogue without preconditions with His Holiness the Dalai Lama or his representatives to resolve differences and achieve meaningful autonomy for Tibetans. We're also calling on increased access to Tibet for US and other officials, including journalists like yourself. And we seek reciprocity from China regarding the access that PRC officials enjoy in our own country. Two additional points are that we want to promote activities that protect the environment and the water resources of the Tibetan Plateau, on which over 1 billion people depend. And finally, we seek to address the very significant humanitarian needs of Tibetan refugees. We want to support opportunities for these refugees to improve their livelihoods, and we must ensure that they are not forcibly returned to China. So it is a multi-pronged agenda that I'm pursuing, one that we seek to intensively engage international partners to build support in this very concerted effort.
Thank you. Talking about long-term solution to this, which is, we'll talk about resolution of Sino-Tibetan conflict. Tibetans for many years now have proposed dialogue with the Chinese leadership. China, on the other hand, has not come to the negotiating table. And the Special Coordinator for Tibetan Issues since 1997 has been pushing for a dialogue between these two sides. What would the United States Special Coordinator for Tibetan Issues do differently this time to pressurize China and in promoting a dialogue between the People's Republic of China and His Holiness the Dalai Lama or his representatives?
I intend to work intensively with partners throughout the US government, with the very significant support you see for the Tibetan people and their rights on a bipartisan basis within the US Congress, and certainly with like-minded partners and governments in the international community, where I think over the last year, you've seen the administration make very important advances in showing international solidarity and in holding China to account for its egregious human rights abuses. With respect to meaningful and direct dialogue, this is a cornerstone of the special coordinator role and something that I will continue to call for. And ultimately, we believe that a negotiated agreement that leads to meaningful autonomy for Tibetans and ensures that they can preserve their religion, their culture, and their language, this provides the best hope for long-term stability in the region. So we are absolutely resolute on this point, and it's a major aspect of my role. If you ask about what we're doing differently, I will say that the Biden-Harris administration is elevating our responses and our coordination with respect to transnational repression. And this is the very concerning phenomenon of authoritarian governments, including the PRC, effectively exporting their repression and using coercion, technology, diplomacy to pressure diaspora actors and particularly those advocating for human rights. So the transnational repression aspect is an important part of my mandate when we look at our support for Tibetan diaspora communities across the world, and it's something that we'll be engaging our international partners on as well.
Right. Under Secretary Zeya, you just talked about effective implementation of Reciprocal Access to Tibet Act. With Beijing Olympics 2022 right around the corner, we will surely see China imposing a higher level of restriction in Tibet with regards to free and independent media. How will the Office of Special Coordinator for Tibetan Issues ensure an increased access to Tibet for United States officials, journalists, and other citizens as consistent with the Reciprocal Access to Tibet Act of 2018?
Well, with respect to the Olympics, I want to underscore that the United States took a principled decision not to send any diplomatic or official representation to the Beijing Winter Olympics and Paralympic Games, given the PRC's ongoing genocide and crimes against humanity in Xinjiang and their other severe human rights abuses, including in Tibet. So, this question of access is critical. And I think that our decision with respect to the Olympics was also to show that we would not treat these games as business as usual, and that we would not be contributing to the fanfare of the games in such a way that obscures the reality of human rights abuses occurring as we speak in the PRC. So on the question of access, this is an absolute priority. We have a legislative mandate as well that we intend to uphold. And I think there is an opportunity in our stance with respect to the Olympics to show our commitment to promoting human rights and to shine a light on the reality of the situation in Tibet and elsewhere.
A group of bipartisan United States members of Congress have written to you just ahead of your appointment as the Special Coordinator for Tibetan Issues regarding this. And you also have a decade-long high-level experiences in United States foreign policy. How will the Office of Special Coordinator for Tibetan Issues work on prioritizing multilateral coordination on policy initiatives pertaining to Tibet?
I have to say, I'm so heartened by the very strong bipartisan expression of support for President Biden and Secretary Blinken's decision to name me as the special coordinator. And I think there is a long tradition of bipartisan US congressional support for advancing the rights of the Tibetan people, which I intend to also integrate in my role as coordinator. In my nomination hearing and my opening statement, I made a point of mentioning my concerns and my past leadership roles on advancing the rights of the Tibetan people and calling upon the PRC to end its repressive policies. So the US Congress is a vitally important partner. I have already begun, in my initial weeks as special coordinator, direct engagement with the US Congress. I intend to expand this. And certainly there is a parallel internationally as well, where I think legislative bodies have a very important role to play in democracies around the world and in expressing the concerns of their people with respect to the severe violations of human rights occurring in Tibet, and the need for the international community to speak with one voice in expressing our concerns.
All right. As stated in the same letter by the United States members of Congress, the Tibetan refugees in Nepal do not have any legal status, neither do have any ways to acquire a legal status. Consequently, they have become vulnerable and they lack means to assert rights to equal treatment before law. How will the Office of Special Coordinator for Tibetan Issues, plan to find a solution to these issues?
Well, you raised a very important concern, and this is, I think, where there is a very important nexus with my role as Undersecretary of State for Civilian Security, Democracy, and Human Rights, and my parallel role as Special Coordinator for Tibetan Issues. I'm proud in my role as Undersecretary to oversee our Bureau of Population, Refugees, and Migration, which has for decades offered vital, life-saving support for Tibetan refugees in Nepal and throughout the world. So certainly this has been the issue that you mentioned, the difficulties that Tibetans face in registration in Nepal. This has been a priority concern for our embassy in Kathmandu and for the Department of State. It's an issue on which we continue to engage, and we are determined to make progress, but we are also absolutely steadfast in offering sustained protection support and humanitarian support to meet these needs.
Tonight, as we speak under Secretary Zeya, there are a lot of Tibetans watching us, Tibetans who place high hopes in you, your office, and the US administration. What would be your message to the Tibetans around the world?
My message to your audience is that the United States is absolutely committed in its defense of the human rights and the unique cultural, religious, historical, linguistic traditions of the Tibetan people, and that you are not alone, that you have the support of the international community, and we want to work with you, and we want to shine a light on what's happening and work together to create a brighter, a more prosperous, and ultimately a future that really enshrines the human dignity of the Tibetan people.
Thank you so much, Undersecretary Zeya, for taking your time out for this interview. It was an absolute honor having you with us tonight.
Thank you so much, Tenzin, and take care.